shit. That's what I'm talking about. Wait.
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to High School to Higher Ed, a father-daughter perspective, a special pulse check mini-series brought to you by Enrollify. I'm Emma Kavanaugh, a ninth grader just starting high school.
And I'm Kevin Kavanaugh, Emma's dad, and an enrollment management professional for the last 30 years.
This series is about seeing the college admissions process through a different perspective, mine. We'll explore how young people are beginning to perceive college, the messages they're getting from counselors, family, and even colleges themselves.
By stepping into these early conversations, we hope to offer some real insights for enrollment managers and marketers, things you can't find in the data, but in real everyday moments.
Let's dive into today's episode.
Hey, Emma, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. Welcome to you and to all of our listeners for another episode of High School to Higher Ed, a father-daughter perspective, which is one of the Pulse Check series on Enrollify. Good to be with you again, Emma.
Good to be with you.
Happy National 529 Day. How about that? Do you even know what a 529 is?
Kind of.
What is it? Tell me.
It's something having to do with saving for college.
Yeah. Your parents and your grandparents have been saving for college for a long time. So it's ironic that we're doing a podcast on you traveling from high school to higher ed and me being a higher ed guy advising you. Meanwhile, I've been saving in a 529 for you longer than you've been alive. And the output of this whole thing is going to be some nice college out there draining my 529 account so that you get a great education. So,
Thanks.
You got it. So what we decided on last time as we were recording our last episode was that we were going to do a bit of a unique episode on this one. In all the other episodes that we've done in season 1 and now in season 2, you've done a fair amount of research and developing content and looking at emails, going to websites, paying attention to advertising and otherwise. This one, you're coming into a little bit cold, and I wanted to do that intentionally because what we decided we wanted to talk about, this is going to be a bit of a two-parter. First part will be us talking about what your ideal college visit looks like for a ninth grader who's never actually been on a college visit. And then next season, after maybe we visit one or two schools, which we might do based on where we do some summer travel, we'll have expectation versus reality. And then you can give some insights onto what your real experience was. But for now, I want to pick your brain on what a college visit might look like in your minds. How's that sound to you?
Sounds great.
So to be fair, you've never been on a college visit, correct?
Nope.
But you have been on college campuses before.
I have for fencing.
Yeah. So for fencing and...
Travel.
Yeah. And what else? Visiting your father at work?
Oh, that's true.
I mean, come on. I mean, that was the most obvious.
Really?
I've worked at a few schools, and you visited me and spent a little time on my campuses, but none of that's
I
been
only
that.
remember like 2 of them.
Okay, well, that's fine. But ultimately, you've never gone on a formal, official visit. So tell me, when you hear about the idea of visiting a campus, without me hitting you with too much leading of the witness, what comes to mind? When you think about that idea that we're going to get in the car and drive to a school that you're interested in for a quote unquote visit, what in your mind is that going to be like? Pulling into that parking lot of that school, what do you expect? What do you think is going to happen on a visit?
I think I expect to learn more about the school and like where I could be going to school and the dorms and all the other things that are going to be really important if I end up going there. And also just learning more information about the school itself.
So tell me in your mind, like if you were to close your eyes for a second, what is the atmosphere and the people and the activities? What do you think is going to happen on that visit?
I think there's going to be a lot of like touring around and hearing tour guides talk, but I also think there's going to be, I guess, like information sessions to give you more information about the school, because I think that's really important too. As much as the campus is important, the campus shows you the highlights of what the school looks like, but it doesn't show you the actual like behind the scenes of what's going to happen in your day-to-day life.
Okay, that's fair. And we'll come back to some of that. But you touched on something, and this is the part that I didn't want to lead you on. So when you think about a visit, do you see it just being you and like me and mom on a tour with one tour guide or maybe one other family? Do you see this as being like a mid-sized group where there's like an information session and we're sitting in an auditorium and there's like more people? Or do you see a big event like a college fair with like an open house with balloons, all kinds of activities? What's your ideal? What would make you feel most comfortable getting the experience that you really want to get out? Is it intimate or is it big event?
I think the tour itself should be relatively small because you're walking around with a big group. Like if you are, then it's going to be hard to hear the tour guide and you might not be able to see some of the things that you wanted to see with a big group. But for the information session, I feel like that could be bigger because it's more of like a presentation than it is like a walking around a school. Because I think that can be done in a big group because it's the same information that you're sharing with everyone. But I have different interests in, say, the 3 other kids or 5 other kids I would be going on a tour with. So we're not going to be able to see some of the things that I would want to see or that they would want to see because it's not really going to be specialized in a tour if it's a big group.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this question. Are you more likely to ask questions on a tour, like a small tour, or would you be likely to raise your hand at an information session with other students and parents and ask questions?
Probably a small tour, but I think I would also, in perspective, like you're thinking about going to this school, so you really do want to make sure that you're getting the information you want. So I think if I did have a question that I really want answered, I would be willing to raise my hand, but not everyone would be.
Yeah, that's hugely important. We work so hard at getting students to our campuses. We want them to ask questions. We don't want them to just sit there. We put together presentations and events that we think answer a lot of the questions, but we want the engagement. We don't want people leaving our campus. If you've taken the time and energy to come visit us, we want you to leave with all of your questions answered. So while our content, I think, is often very good in admissions offices and enrollment teams, you got to raise your hand. You got to ask questions. Okay, so that's good. We'll see how inquisitive you are when you're on one of these campuses.
Yep.
Let me ask you this, because I've often wondered this. When it comes to the actual tour guide, so you said that you envision touring around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Does it matter to you, and think about this for a minute, does it matter to you if the tour guide is a male or a female? Or does it matter to you if this is a first-year student that's really close in age to you, or a senior who is a little bit older and might have more experience about the school? Meaning, can you relate to one versus the other better? Do you want a kid that's similar to you, like a white kid from New Jersey, from the suburbs? Or do you want somebody that's really different from you, like from another part of the country and just really different? Or does that matter? So go ahead, answer those questions, and I'll ask you one last question about the tour guide.
I don't really think the gender of the tour guide matters. I think in terms of age, there's benefits to both the younger and the older, because I think the younger can talk more about the adjustment into college and what you're going to see and stuff like that. But the senior or the older student would be able to tell you a lot about their whole 4 years and what you can expect through the 4 years of college, which I guess could be beneficial because you could have a really great freshman year and then have a really terrible sophomore year. So I think either one could be beneficial for different things. It kind of depends what you're looking for.
Okay. Now, My last question's on the tour guide, and this is like hugely debated, I think, amongst enrollment people. In your mind, does it matter how the tour guide dresses?
Yes.
How so?
I think they should be professional because they're representing the school and they're representing the school not only in front of the kids, and the kids might not necessarily care themselves, but their parents who are going to pay a lot of money for them to go there. And I think also in terms of the tour guide, it doesn't matter like if they're the same or different for me, but I think as long as they represent the school, that's what matters. And I feel like it sets a bad tone if you're coming in sweatpants to give a tour. Like that's not professional. That's not showing that you care. And I think that's like a bad representation of the school.
Mm. Sweatpants or hot pants, neither are particularly good. I would agree.
What are hot pants?
Exactly. That's exactly what I want you to be asking at 15 years of age. What about school branding? Do you think that they should be in college branded sweatshirts and things, or can they just wear their regular street clothes?
Well, they shouldn't wear their regular street clothes. They should have, I think they should all be uniform.
Okay.
Personally, but they should definitely be wearing school colors, whether or not it's like a uniform or whether or not it's a like, school mascots on it or whatever. It doesn't really matter, but I feel like the school colors would be nice.
Okay.
Just in my head.
Hey, it's Mallory. Quick break for anyone thinking about what AI really means for higher ed. The next step isn't smarter tools, it's a smarter team. Imagine support that never sleeps, help in 100 languages, answers at midnight, follow-ups before morning. That's what a digital workforce brings to higher ed, and it's already happening with Bolt agents from Element 451. Come see it live at the Engage Summit this June. Register at enrollify.org/engage and use code ENGAGE50 to get $50 off. All right, back to the show.
Okay, so moving on. What do you think are the things that are must-sees when you go on a campus visit? And think if there are buildings, I want to hear about it, but go beyond just buildings. Is there sort of like a feeling or an interaction or a specific place on campus that you really want to see? Tell me what that looks like in your mind.
I think I would definitely want to see kind of just kids interacting on campus and what that's like. And I know it probably wouldn't be too realistic with a big group, but with a small group going into a classroom and just seeing what they do just for a couple minutes, just to see the class and see how kids interact with each other and how the professor interacts with the kids, I think would be really interesting. And then in terms of buildings, I would definitely want to see the dorms, and not just like the nice ones, but I want to see like, I know the freshmen have the worst dorms, so I definitely want to see the freshman dorms because for some people it might not matter, but for me, like I can't be living somewhere where it's not at least clean. And I think the food matters too, because I like food. I'm a foodie. So I think that seeing that would help too. And also, this also goes back to having a bigger or small group, having more tailored things. So for me, I'd want to go see the journalism or the political science building, but for other people, they might want to see the labs or anything like that. So I think seeing those kinds of things that would relate to your potential major would also be interesting.
Okay, that's a good point. Customization, because there's depending on the size of the campus, there could be buildings that are, a little further afield. And if you wanted to go see that, you don't want to drag everybody on the tour to it. So you want to be sure that there's a level of customization that you can see what you want to see. It's a good point.
Definitely.
I noticed you didn't mention the library. And as a guy who's 5'29" is going to get drained, I want to make sure that you're going to be using the library.
Of course I'm going to use the library, but I feel like a library is just a library.
Okay, good.
I mean, if it looks nice and it's pretty, that's great. But as long as it's a quiet place to study, I think that's all that really matters.
Okay, to all my enrollment people, you can take the library off the tour.
I mean, to some people, it might be more important because some people, I don't know. I could see myself staying in my dorm and studying sometimes too.
Okay, and some people do that. I was a complete opposite. I couldn't focus in my dorm. I needed to go.
And that would be someone like that would be someone that would want to see the library.
I didn't look at the library on the tour either. I just went there once I got there. is there anything that you think would be on a tour like boring or uncomfortable or a waste of time, sort of on the other end of things, like things that you absolutely, wouldn't be interested in seeing at all?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because considering you're going to be living there for 4 years, you want to see the bad parts of the campus too, even if they're not terrible. And you want to see the positive and the negatives, because I feel like on these tours they're definitely going to be trying to pull you towards the positives and not really show you the negatives. But if there's like a facility that's really worn down, even though maybe it doesn't look as great for the college, I would still want to see it, because when I get to the school, if I decide to go there, I'm going to be disappointed if I see that there's a really rundown building. So I feel like that would factor into my decisions.
That's a really good point. I've seen campuses and colleges that go out of their way. Of course, we have to put our best foot forward, but some schools really go out of their way to not show the bad stuff. And then when students arrive as students, they have to be in sort of the more run down or dated buildings. And they're like, wait a second, you never showed us this on the tour. So you've got to own it. I think, you own your warts and explain it on the front end so that there's no issues on the back end. Because for my money, there's issues related to student retention when it comes to misrepresenting your school too positively on the front end. And what I mean by that, Emma, is that, there are students that arrive to a campus and are dissatisfied pretty quickly. And it could be for a variety of reasons. And some of it could have been their fault. But to the extent that we can take ownership as admissions people, I would hate for students to choose my school because I did a funky tour route that focused on all the good stuff and then none of the negative stuff. And then the student arrived and, realized what their life was really going to be like for 4 years and then leave my school after a semester or two. That's not good either. So I like your thinking, like show the good and the bad, like own it.
And I also think people know that, like teens know that these colleges are trying to get their business. And if you have all these pretty buildings and pretty signs and balloons and excitement, sure, that's going to make them excited. But I think everyone knows that you're not seeing all of the negative sides. So while you can put that up, and so kids still will have in the back of their head that that's a potential to happen. And so I think just showing it so that kids can be like, oh, that's not as bad as I thought it was going to be as the negative, then it might even be more positive in their head.
Yeah. I'm just, as you're talking, I'm thinking about something you said a few moments ago, and it's so observant on your part and such a change in my business, in that you just said, of course, these colleges are trying to get our business, referring to teenagers. And it's so true. I mean, that's what this whole podcast has been about, like how colleges are marketing to students. But 15 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, really colleges were building this urgency or this, exclusivity and this, you come to our college and act quickly, or you get a lot of applications, it's very competitive. So we build, this demand for our schools. But at the end of the day, what we're really doing, especially in this day and age, when there's fewer and fewer students out there, colleges are really trying to get your business, and again, on 529 day, it's all about, trying to get the tuition dollars. And otherwise, not at every school. Some schools are really shaping classes and trying to build a really unique environment, but very many schools are really focused on tuition dollars and net tuition dollars, and they need to get the right students that are willing to pay to attend their institution. So you're right, trying to get our business. I mean, truer words have not been said. So you talked about some of the people in some of the earlier questions that we were working through. So what's most important to you, like on a visit? Like, let's assume we've got I don't know that we'll actually do this, but let's assume we're going to fly someplace.
Wow.
Like you mentioned the other day, like out of the blue, by the way.
You keep bringing this up.
Well, yeah, well, it's good content. We were driving home from practice and you said, yeah, I don't know, maybe I'll apply to a California school. And that was like, what? You've been so East Coast and so city centric that, just throwing out there that, hey, maybe I'll apply to a school in California was, a bit of a dogleg. But let's assume we do that. We fly out and we go look at University of Southern California. We have 1 or 2 hours that we spend there, and that's it. What would be the most important to you in terms of the people that you spoke to? You mentioned students. You really only mentioned students so far. So in your mind, is that who you would want to interact with in order to, number one, know if that was a school that you wanted to apply to, or number two, if that was a school that you really wanted to go to if you were accepted there?
I think that students are definitely important to talk to because they're the ones that are living on that campus every day. And while there are a lot of other, I guess, like players at the school, like professors that play a big role in these students' lives, it ends up being the students that are going to have the impacts of what the campus looks like, the food, the dorms, the professors. And so I think they have, I guess, a lot of wisdom on the school itself, and that would help the best for me.
Okay. What questions might you have? You've got a nice tour guide. You're really vibing with them. You're like really gregarious, and they're sharing a lot of good information. But what kind of question might you want to ask them?
I feel like one question I would probably ask is, what is your favorite and least favorite part of being here? Because I think having the positive part, but also having the negative part would definitely be helpful. But also at the same time, I don't know how much a tour guide is going to tell me about what they don't like about the school. But in terms of, even if I just see a student on campus that's not a tour guide, I think that would be helpful to know.
So you would be, I don't know that I think conceptually you would be comfortable with the idea. Whether or not you'd actually do it, like walk up to somebody on the quad and say, hey, I know you don't know who I am, but I had a question for you. Can you envision yourself doing that?
Definitely. I think I might. It depends.
Okay.
Because you don't want to interrupt someone's flow if they have their AirPods in and they're doing their work or they're talking to their friends. I'm not going to interrupt someone, but if they're just walking around on their phone,
okay,
maybe.
All right. So now, in terms of the information session, you're probably, and I'm going to help you with this, like kind of make sure that you get certain questions answered. Do you envision yourself raising your hand? And I know we talked about this a little bit, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how comfortable would you be asking your questions?
I think maybe 1 or 2 questions, but not a plethora of them because I don't know. I just don't think that I'll be wanting to ask like 10 questions.
Okay. So then my next question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how comfortable would you be in me asking the questions that I know that are on your mind?
No.
Am I allowed to talk on tours and information sessions, or are you going to like muzzle me?
Preferably not.
No?
I mean,
I'm going to be the annoying dad? I'm not allowed?
You can tell me to ask the question. I'm not going to annoyed at you anyway.
You're not going to what?
You can tell me the question and I can ask it if I think it's a good question. But at the same time, I don't know that I'll want you whispering questions in my ear the whole time.
Right. Well, to be fair, you're a very nice child, but also you're a teenager. And there are days that I ask you what the weather is and you give me a nasty look and answer. So I can only imagine what eyes you're going to shoot to me as I say, hey, ask about the journalism program. You shut up, stop it. Right? Is that reality?
Well, I would trust you and know that you're asking questions that are important because of your experience. But at the same time, I think I would get a little bit annoyed if you kept telling me what to say.
Dad, you're embarrassing me. Stop it.
I have never said that before.
I can just chat GPT the answer.
I don't use GPT.
Okay. So I think we got a pretty good feel for what you are looking for and hoping for on your college visits. And I think as we, explore this a little bit more, as we actually get out there, I will be taking notes and we'll be bringing some of this back to the listeners. But before we sign off, are there any thoughts that you had or questions that you had for me about any of this stuff, campus visits, campus events, anything along those lines?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. So in the future, we're going to come back again in the fall. It'll be the beginning of your sophomore year. By then, we'll have a number of other things that have gone on in your life in terms of the high school experience related to the college experience. We might even have some of those college visits under our belt, and we'll do an episode on that. We're also talking about the idea of going to some college fairs and giving you an opportunity to give some feedback on your college fair experience and what you're seeing colleges provide in terms of promotional materials and messaging and otherwise. So we're going to have fun with that. But if any of our listeners have any other ideas on episodes or content that they want to hear from Emma or from me, but mainly Emma, just shoot us an email in the show notes. Emma's email is there, and we'll follow up.
Yeah.
All right. So until then, thanks for listening.
Thank
Emma,
you.
appreciate you being on with me. I love doing this with you.
I love doing this with you.
All right. So until next time, everybody, thanks for listening. Emma, I think it's time for you and I to make like a tree and get out of here.
Let's make like a tree and leave, you idiot.
All right. Love you. Bye, everybody.
Bye, I love you.
The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.